I've been thinking about something lately. It occurs to me that the older I get, the less confident I am about my first impression of people. And while I was younger, things felt simpler and easy. If I met someone who looked happy, I assumed that they're just doing well. If they smile a lot, I assume that life is treating them kindly. If they were successful, I just believe that things came easy for them or they just got lucky or something. But adulthood has a way of challenging every of those assumptions one after the other. It teaches me that what you see is not the whole story. So a few years ago, I met someone who always seems to have everything together. Whenever we spoke, they were cheerful and always encouraging, always available, always supporting. That kind of person that you can describe as being strong and like they have it all together. Then one day, almost like an accident, right? Let me say almost by accident, they shared what was happening behind the scenes, from the financial pressure to the family responsibilities to the health issues and health concerns to the sleepless nights, the kind of battles that never made it into a random conversations or a social media post. And in that moment, I remembered leaving that conversation feeling surprised and sober at the same time. Now, this is not because they were struggling, but more importantly, it is because I assume that they have it all together. I assume that we're not supposed to be in that kind of situation, right? And since then, I've started paying close attention to a whole lot of things, to how quickly, even as humans and as young people, or as people generally, we create stories about other people, right? Someone did reply a message, and we assume that they are ignoring us. A colleague seems distant, and we conclude that they are becoming unfriendly. A friend cancelled plans, and we assume that they don't value our relationship anymore, and the list continues. But the truth is this: we really have enough information about those conclusions, and yet our minds are incredibly good at filling the blanks with assumptions. And maybe, just maybe, that's because uncertainty makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes us feel not so good. And we would rather have an explanation, even if it's a wrong one, than to admit that we simply don't know. And I've done it too. I've done it more times than I would like to admit, even as a person. But sometimes it's what we do. Sometimes I've judged people before understanding them. Sometimes I've expected much more from people without even understanding what they have the capacity to give. Sometimes I've taken silence for pride, when in reality it was just simple exhaustion. Like, people are tired and exhausted, and that made me wonder, how many people have I misunderstood simply because I saw one chapter of their story? And I think that one of the greatest lessons of adulthood for me is that people are not just what we see. People are carrying far more than they let on. And the people who always seems calm and maybe feel like they are always strong may be carrying enormous responsibility beyond what we think. That friend who takes care of everything and ensure that everyone laughs may be using humor to cover some difficult days and some difficult moments. And maybe that your friend that is a business owner who is always celebrating others, always celebrating online, showing like everything is going well, may be struggling and they're still finding ways to pay their next salary, right? And the new parent that seems very happy and excited in the photo that you saw on social media may not have had a full night's sleep maybe for a couple of weeks now. And the list continues. We all see moments. We see moments that people share, but people live an entire lives. And those are two different things entirely. This idea doesn't change how we relate to people. Rather, it changes how we lead, how we communicate, how we build businesses, how we build our relationships. Because when we realize that everyone is carrying something invisible, we stop asking some set of questions. You stop asking, what do people want? Maybe you begin to ask, what might they need. They've not found what to express. There right there is a different question, right? It's the question that thought leaders ask. It's the question great teachers ask. It's the question remarkable brands also ask. And maybe, just maybe, it's a question we should ask ourselves more, even in our personal relationships too. Now, there's another thought that has stayed with me. Have you noticed how we often remember people not for the biggest thing that they do, but for the smallest? A teacher who believes in us, a manager who showed us grace after we made a mistake, a friend who called at exactly the right time, or even a stranger who offered kindness in a difficult moment. Those moments matter because they met a need. We didn't know how to explain that need, but some way, somehow, those people came into the picture and they fill in the gap. And that right there is the power of us paying attention to other people beyond the things that they say to us. Not the kind of attention that we discuss in the social media sense, right? But the kind of attention in the human sense, the kind that notice, the kind that listens, the kind that is patient enough, the kind that refuses to rush to conclusion. And I wonder what our relationship will look like if we begin to replace assumptions with curiosity. And instead of asking what's wrong with them, we ask, I wonder what they are carrying. And instead of thinking in our head, they've changed, we go extra mile and we ask, what has life been asking of them lately? I believe that those questions don't guarantee perfect understanding. However, they do create space for compassion, and I think that compassion begins exactly where certainty ends. And that's the beauty of us being humans. So, before the end of today's conversation, I would like to leave you with something to think about this very weekend. Is there someone you've quietly created a story about? Someone you've decided to be distant from, and you call them proud, or you call them difficult, you call them unbearable, you call them, uninterested, difficult to deal with, whatsoever we've called them. We've just made a conclusion in our mind without ever asking what might be happening beneath the surface that we are not seeing. Maybe this week is an invitation to replace one assumption with one clear conversation. Maybe it's time to take a pause and send the message. Make the call to ask one more question before reaching your final conclusion. Because the truth is this, everyone you meet is carrying a story you haven't been told. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do is to remember that before we respond. Thank you for spending this moment with me. I hope this conversation stays with you longer after today. Until next week, keep thinking deeply. The world needs more of it.